Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today in this video, we're gonna be working on the Mini again. So I just recently showed you guys how to remove a stuck stud. So I removed the studs that were attached to the turbocharger on my Mini Cooper, and because of that, I can now get access to the one bolt and stud that were holding on my exhaust manifold onto my cylinder head. So if you remember before from part 3 of the series, I couldn't get access to this one nut because of this one stud on my turbo. Now that I have them removed, I can continue with the disassembly process. So let's jump right into it.
With the studs on the turbocharger now removed, we can now get access to the nut that's attaching the exhaust manifold up to the cylinder head. Once that nut's removed, you're going to be able to remove the bracket that's also securing the manifold up to the head, and then at that point, we can remove everything in one shot. Now it is going to be somewhat cumbersome because the turbocharger and the turbocharger bracket are still attached all in one piece. So to get it out, we're going to need to wiggle it and maneuver it around everything else that's still in the engine bay. With that removed, there's a heat shield that's still going to be attached to the cylinder head. You can slide it off of the studs, and then to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to be grabbing an external torque socket, and I'm going to be removing each and every one of the exhaust studs that are attached into the head. So they just thread out. Now there should be 10 in total, so once you have them all removed and disconnected, you can take them out and set them aside. Now while you're at this point, you can also go ahead and clean up the area over here that's on the block. You don't have to, but because I'm a little OCD, I'm just going to clean it down and wipe it with a rag to make it a little bit nicer. Now since we're working with the cylinder head, I'm going to go on the opposite side of the motor and remove the studs that are attached for the intake side. So again, you can use your external torque socket to wrench each one of them out. Now for the intake side, there's going to be 5 studs as opposed to 10 for the exhaust. Take them out, set them aside, and be sure to label which one's which so that you remember later when we have to put them back together where they go.
So we have the exhaust manifold out, we've got everything over here removed, the turbo and the exhaust, along with that bracket that connects up to that little bolt right there is all removed, and I had to take it out and wiggle it all in one shot. So that's all gone. The intake side is removed. So pretty much all we have left is some of the electronics like the alternator and the entire motor and trans. Now what I think I'm going to be doing to make my life a little bit easier, because I'm not just doing a cylinder head rebuild, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to start taking everything apart on the front end of the vehicle so that I can get the entire motor and pull it out. Now the reason why I want to do that is because it's going to make my life a little bit easier when I want to put the forged internals inside the engine, when I want to work on the transmission, put a better clutch and a whole bunch of other stuff inside of there. So I figured I might as well go through the effort now to get to that point so that I'm not going to be swearing later. Because if I'm just replacing the cylinder head, what I'm doing with it like this would have been perfect. But I'm also working on the bottom end of the engine, so I've got to get access to that too. But as it stands, we have all of this removed. So the turbo, the manifold, and that bracket all came out in one shot. And because I have this out like this, I can get access to the 10mm bolt that was supporting the bracket right here that connects to the block and the turbo. So I can take that out with the 10mm, take that apart, and then I can disconnect the turbo also from the exhaust manifold. Now I'll probably be reusing this exhaust manifold for my bigger turbo, so I'm not going to need this turbo on here. So I'll probably sell it, clean it up, and get rid of this thing, but I need to disconnect these two from one another.
When the entire exhaust manifold was in the engine bay, it was kind of difficult to get access to that 10mm bolt that I'm removing right here. But with it out, I have a lot more space to put a socket on there along with a ratchet to take it out. And you can see how much effort is actually needed to break loose that little bolt. There's no way that I could have removed that by just using a wrench with it in the engine bay. Now that of course is for my particular engine. Maybe if you guys are doing this to your Mini, maybe it's going to be a little bit easier. But with everything removed, it's a lot easier to work with. Now for the turbocharger as well, I'm going to be disconnecting the wastegate from the turbocharger. So I'm going to be taking off the one nut found on the back side of the wastegate, but I'm going to be making sure that the front nut stays in the exact same spot. Now to make sure that it stays there so that the wastegate is properly dialed in, I'm going to be leaving the nut closest to the wastegate in the same spot, and I'm going to tighten the back nut up to the front one. Now that way it's not going to loosen or move on me, and it's going to be very simple to keep it in the proper spot when I want to install the wastegate again back on the car. As for the vacuum actuator found on the cold side of the turbocharger, it's held in place by 2 11mm bolts. Once you take them out, the entire thing should just be able to slide right out, and then you're going to have it removed from the turbo.
So I guess this kind of what makes this official now. You see this thing here? That is an engine stand. I was able to pick it up from Canadian Tire, which is a local store to me. They had this on clearance. Usually this is $100 plus tax. They had it for some reason so cheap, it was $40 plus tax. Now, the reason why it was so cheap is because this is last year's model, or the last generation of engine stand. The new version is just all black instead of a little bit of red and black. So, I mean, for that price, that defect, let's call it, I'll take it for that price. But as for the mini motor, everything is going to be coming out. So the bumper, the fender flares have to come out, the wheels have to come off because the axles need to be removed from the transmission. Initially, I only thought that I was going to be replacing the cylinder head, opening that up. But since I'm going to be going through that effort, I might as well go ahead and build the bottom end of the engine along with the transmission. I want to put a limited slip differential in there. If you guys know some companies that have some good stuff, especially if you guys are mini guys, let me know. Now, there's a couple companies that I've been looking at. OS Geigen for the transmission, or for the differential, WaveTrack, and Quaif. I said Quaif, not Queef. Those are 3 companies that make those limited slip differentials for minis. There might be more, I'm not sure if there are any more, but if there are and you guys know of some, let me know. The internals of the motor, I'll probably be going with CP pistons or another set of forged pistons. Connecting rods are also going to be forged. While I'm opening everything up and while I have everything on the front end removed, I'm also going to be doing a full timing chain. So I'm not sure when the previous owner did the timing chain on this thing. Since I'm going to be removing the cylinder head from the bottom end of the motor, I might as well do this too while I'm at it. But in order to do all of this, the front end has to come off. Well, it doesn't have to, but I want to take it off. Quiet phone. The process is, you know, like we're almost there. We do have most of the job done, considering we have all the fluids out, the electronics disconnected, and all of that. We're pretty much there. So it's not that much more work to get to the point that we can pull everything off the front. So bumper needs to come off, and because the fender flares are attached to the bumper and the fender, that needs to be removed. Wheels need to be removed. The front brace here needs to be disconnected. That's the bumper bar. We've got the rad, we have our intercooler down low, and a couple other things. But it shouldn't be too bad of a job. We've got more of the big stuff out of the way, so getting to that point with the front end off is gonna be pretty simple. I can probably have all that done in one video, and that's probably gonna be the next video for this series. But we have the engine stand, which means the engine is coming out and it's gonna be put on this. Now I will need a cherry picker to take the engine out of the motor. Let's try that again. I'm gonna need a cherry picker so I can take the engine out of the engine bay. That makes more sense. And then we're gonna be home free from there. But if you guys have any questions or even recommendations for parts for me to get, throw them down in the comment section below and I'd be more than happy to help. Again guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.